6 years later, Billionaire CEO finds his ex selling hot dogs with twins that look just like him. Greg Nelson's life changed at a traffic light. One moment, he was reviewing quarterly projections on his tablet in the back of his Tesla, half listening to his driver James discuss the best route to the Magnificent Mile. The next moment, something in Millennium Park made every thought in his head evaporate like smoke. It felt like the world tilted on its axis. His eyes locked onto a red and white striped cart near the park entrance, and suddenly he couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't do anything except stare at the woman behind it, moving with practiced efficiency as she served the lunch crowd. "Stop the car." His voice came out strangled, barely above a whisper. James glanced in the rearview mirror. "Sir, we're already running late for the..." "Stop the car. Now." The Tesla jerked to a halt at the curb. Horns blared behind them. James started to protest about the investor meeting, about the tow-away zone, about the fact that Greg Nelson, billionaire CEO of Nelson Technologies, did not jump out of moving vehicles in the middle of downtown Chicago traffic. But Greg was already gone. He crossed the street like a man in a trance, his $1,000 leather shoes hitting the pavement with purpose. Each step felt weighted, heavy, like walking through water. The sounds of the city, car horns, construction, street musicians, faded into white noise. All he could see was that cart, that woman, those children. The autumn sun filtered through the trees, casting dancing shadows on the sidewalk. The air smelled like roasting hot dogs, mustard, and something else, something that dragged him back 6 years in an instant. Her perfume. That same vanilla and cinnamon scent that used to cling to his pillows, his shirts, his skin. Behind the cart stood Beverly Perry. His Beverly. Except she wasn't his anymore, hadn't been for 6 years, not since he'd sent her engagement ring back via FedEx with a note that still haunted him: "I need to focus on the company without distractions." She wore a blue apron over a white t-shirt, both marked with grease stains and condiment smears. Her hair was pulled back in a high bun, and her hands, those hands that used to trace patterns on his chest while they talked about their future, now worked with the efficiency of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. Wrapping hot dogs. Making change. Smiling at customers with a warmth that once belonged only to him. But it wasn't just Beverly that made his heart stop. Next to the cart, helping her with napkins and ketchup packets, were 2 children. A boy and a girl, maybe 5 years old, with matching halos of curly hair that caught the sunlight. Brown skin a shade lighter than Beverly's. And eyes, those eyes, the exact shade of hazel that Greg saw every morning in the mirror. The same unusual color his grandmother had, the same color that appeared in exactly 1 out of every 3 generations of Nelson men. The boy looked up at his mother, laughing at something she said, and Greg's world shattered. That dimple. The distinctive dimple on the left cheek that Greg had inherited from his father, that marked every Nelson for 3 generations. The little girl turned to grab more napkins, and her hair fell forward, revealing a cowlick at the crown of her head that stubbornly refused to lie flat. The exact same cowlick Greg spent 15 minutes trying to tame every morning. His children. They had to be. Every cell in his body screamed it. Beverly looked up at exactly that moment, and their eyes met across 10 feet of sidewalk that might as well have been a canyon. For a heartbeat, something flickered in her expression, surprise, maybe, or recognition of the inevitable. But it disappeared so quickly he might have imagined it. Her face hardened into a mask of polite professionalism. No tears. No shock. No visible sign that the man who'd abandoned her was standing 3 feet from her hot dog cart, staring at children who had his face. When she spoke, her voice carried across the space between them like a blade. "Can I interest you in a Chicago-style dog, or would you prefer it with a side of regret?" The question hit him like a physical blow. Greg opened his mouth, but nothing came out. His tongue felt thick, useless. All the boardroom eloquence, all the pitch-perfect investor presentations, every carefully crafted word that had built his billion-dollar empire gone, replaced by a strangled silence that spoke volumes. Beverly, he tried again, but she cut him off with the ease of someone swatting a fly. I sell hot dogs now, not apologies. She turned back to her next customer, dismissing him with practiced efficiency. Welcome to Beverly's Best. What can I get you today? The contrast was obscene. Greg stood there in his custom Tom Ford suit, Italian leather shoes, and a watch worth more than most people's cars, staring at the woman he'd loved, still loved, he realized with crushing certainty, who now wore an apron and worked with hands that had calluses he'd never seen before. The cart itself was modest but immaculate. Red and white striped awning, hand-painted sign reading Beverly's Best Dogs, a small tip jar with a few dollar bills. Behind Beverly, a line of customers waited patiently, some regulars who called her by name. This was her world now. A world she'd built without him. Mom, we're out of relish. The boy ran up, tugging on Beverly's apron. His voice was high and clear, and hearing that word, Mom, sent another spike of pain through Greg's chest. Check the cooler, baby, Beverly said without looking away from the hot dog she was wrapping. Bottom shelf. The little girl, his daughter, glanced at Greg with open curiosity. Are you going to order something, mister? You're holding up the line. Greg looked behind him. A growing crowd of lunchgoers waited, some checking their phones impatiently. He cleared his throat, tried again. Chicago style. Please. Beverly's hands didn't slow as she assembled his order. That'll be $8. He fumbled for his wallet, pulled out a $100 bill. It was all he had. Beverly took it with 2 fingers, like it might contaminate her, and made change with mathematical precision. She handed him the hot dog wrapped in checkered paper, their fingers almost touching. Almost. Enjoy your lunch, sir. The word sir landed like a slap. She'd called him baby, honey, love in another lifetime. Now he was sir. Greg stepped aside, but he couldn't leave. Couldn't move. He watched Beverly serve the next customer, then the next, her rhythm never breaking. The twins helped where they could, the boy his son, handing out napkins, the girl his daughter, restocking condiments from a plastic crate. They were so at ease here. So comfortable in this routine. This was their life. Their normal. And he was a stranger staring from the outside. The boy whispered something to his sister, and she giggled. They both looked at Greg, not with recognition, but with the same curious suspicion children reserve for adults who linger too long. He looks like the guy from Mom's photo box, the boy said, loud enough for Greg to hear. The one she keeps in the closet. Beverly's hands stilled for just a fraction of a second. Eric, honey, take Erika to wash your hands. You've got mustard everywhere. Erik. Erika. Even their names were mirrors of each other. As the children ran toward a nearby park bathroom, Beverly finally looked at Greg directly. Her eyes were harder than he remembered, but underneath the armor, he saw something else. Something that looked like the exhaustion of holding together a life built from broken pieces. If you're not going to eat that, you're wasting good food, she said quietly. And I don't tolerate waste. Greg looked down at the hot dog in his hands. He'd forgotten he was holding it. He took a bite mechanically. The taste exploded on his tongue. Perfectly charred dog, crisp onions, bright tomato, the tangy snap of sport peppers, neon relish, celery salt. It was perfect. Better than perfect. And it tasted like ashes in his mouth. Because all he could think about was the way Beverly used to cook breakfast in his penthouse kitchen, dancing in his t-shirt, how they'd planned to open a restaurant together someday. How he'd thrown all of that away for quarterly earnings and market share. They're mine, aren't they? The question came out before he could stop it. Quiet. Desperate. Beverly's jaw tightened. She looked away, toward the spot where the twins had disappeared. When she looked back, her eyes were bright with something that might have been tears, but her voice was steady as steel. If you're done, step aside. I've got customers. It wasn't a yes, but it wasn't a no. Before we proceed, permit me to welcome you, my lovely family, to another heartwarming story. If you're new here, we wholeheartedly welcome you. To cement your place in this community, please hit the subscribe button now. Don't also forget to hit the notification icon bell to ensure you are the first to see our new story tomorrow. Greg moved to a nearby bench. He didn't sit. Just stood there, hot dog cooling in his hand, watching Beverly work. Watching his children, because they were his, he knew it in his bones, laugh and play between helping their mother. Erik returned first, carrying extra napkins. He stopped next to Greg, studying him with unsettling intensity. "Why are you watching us?" the boy asked. No fear, just childish directness. Greg's voice cracked. "I used to know your mother. A long time ago. Are you a friend?" The question was so innocent, so devastating, that Greg almost laughed. Or cried. He wasn't sure which. "I'd like to be." "Erik." Beverly's voice cut through the moment like a knife. "Come here. Now." Erik shrugged and ran back to the cart. Beverly bent down, whispered something in his ear, her eyes never leaving Greg's face. The message was clear: stay away from my children. Greg finally forced himself to move. He walked back to where his Tesla idled illegally at the curb, James looking increasingly stressed about the parking enforcement officer circling the block. But before he got in, Greg turned back one last time. Beverly was serving a customer, laughing at something they said. Erika was counting coins in the tip jar with intense concentration. Erik was drawing something on the sidewalk with chalk. A family, it looked like. A mom and two kids holding hands. No dad in the picture. Greg slid into the back seat. The leather was cool, the interior climate-controlled to exactly 72 degrees. Classical music played softly from the speakers. Everything was perfect, controlled, expensive. Everything was empty. "Sir." James glanced in the rearview mirror. "The investor meeting?" "Cancel it," Greg heard himself say. "Cancel everything today." "Sir, that's $5 million in." "I don't care." Greg's eyes stayed fixed on Beverly in the side mirror as they pulled away from the curb. She was wiping down her cart, the twins playing nearby, completely unaware that the man who'd just driven away might be their father. Cancel it all. As the Tesla merged into traffic, Greg watched Beverly shrink in the distance until she was just a red and white blur in Millennium Park. The taste of the hot dog still lingered on his tongue, perfectly seasoned, lovingly made, bittersweet as memory. And for the first time in 6 years, Greg Nelson felt the crushing weight of a truth he'd spent $1 billion trying to outrun. The man who'd conquered the world of tech had lost the only place he truly belonged. And maybe, probably, he'd lost 2 children he never knew existed. The phone in his pocket buzzed with messages from his CFO, his legal team, his assistant. The empire demanding his attention, as always. Greg silenced them all. Because somewhere in Millennium Park, 2 5-year-olds with his eyes were eating hot dogs with their mother, living a life he'd chosen to abandon. And he had no idea how, or if, he could ever become part of it. The penthouse was silent except for the hum of central air and the distant pulse of Chicago traffic 43 floors below. Greg Nelson lay on his king-sized bed, Egyptian cotton sheets, memory foam mattress, everything designed for optimal sleep, and stared at the ceiling like it held answers to questions he was terrified to ask. 3 a.m. glowed on his nightstand clock. He'd been lying there for 4 hours. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw them. Beverly's face, older but somehow more beautiful, hardened by years of survival he'd forced upon her. Eric's dimple, an exact replica of his own. Erika's cowlick that refused to behave. The way they moved around that cart with practiced efficiency, a family unit that functioned perfectly without him. They're yours. The thought ricocheted through his mind like a bullet he couldn't dodge. He sat up, swung his legs over the side of the bed. The motion sensor lights gradually illuminated, bathing his bedroom in soft white light that cost $200 per bulb. Everything in this place was premium, curated, expensive. Everything felt hollow. Greg walked to his bar, walnut wood, top-shelf liquor, crystal decanters, and poured 3 fingers of scotch. 25-year-old single malt. $400 a bottle. He'd bought it to celebrate closing a major acquisition. He took a sip. It tasted like ash. He moved to the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city. Chicago glittered below him like a field of diamonds. He'd conquered this city. Built an empire here. Made his name synonymous with success. And somewhere out there, in a modest apartment he'd probably never even seen, his children were sleeping in beds he'd never bought, in rooms he'd never painted, having dreams he knew nothing about. Greg set down his glass and walked to his home office. The scotch sloshed, forgotten. His desk drawer, the bottom one, the one he never opened, stuck slightly when he pulled it. Inside, buried under old business cards and forgotten flash drives, was a small wooden box. His hands shook as he lifted it. Inside was a photograph, edges worn from the number of times he'd looked at it before forcing himself to put it away. Before deciding that moving forward meant forgetting backward. The photo showed him and Beverly at Navy Pier, 7 years ago. She was mid-laugh, her head thrown back, caught in a moment of pure joy. His arms were wrapped around her waist, his face pressed against her neck. Behind them, fireworks exploded over Lake Michigan in bursts of gold and red. It was the night he'd proposed. 7 years earlier, Greg had met Beverly Perry at Chicago Tech Accelerator's demo day. He'd been pitching Nelson Technologies, then just an idea and a PowerPoint, to a room full of skeptical investors. She'd been presenting a food truck app that connected vendors with customers in real time, complete with mobile payments and location tracking. She'd gone before him. He'd watched from backstage, mesmerized. Not just by her pitch, though that was flawless, but by the fire in her eyes when she talked about her vision. The way she commanded the room. The confidence that radiated from her like heat. When she finished, the investors peppered her with questions. She answered every single one without hesitation. Ms. Perry, one gray-haired venture capitalist, had asked, "What makes you think you can compete with established delivery services?" Beverly had smiled. Not nervous. Not defensive. Just certain. Because I'm not competing with them. I'm creating something they can't, a direct connection between independent food entrepreneurs and their customers. We're not just delivering food. We're delivering dreams. The room had applauded. Greg had fallen in love. After the presentations, he'd found her at the networking reception, nursing a glass of cheap wine and studying her phone. "Your pitch was incredible," he'd said, immediately feeling like an idiot. Smooth opener, Nelson. She'd looked up, and those eyes, warm brown with flecks of gold, had assessed him with the same analytical precision she'd used on the investors. "Thanks. Yours wasn't bad either." A slight smile. "Though you might want to work on your close. You lost them in the last 2 slides." He'd laughed, caught off guard by her directness. "Noted." Can I buy you a real drink to make up for my terrible closing? Depends. Are you going to pitch me, or are you actually interested in conversation? Conversation. Definitely conversation. She tilted her head, considering. Okay. But fair warning, I don't do small talk. Neither do I. They'd left the reception and ended up at a dive bar in Wicker Park, talking until 2 a.m. about everything. Technology, food, dreams, fears, the weight of trying to build something from nothing. She told him about growing up on the South Side, watching her mother work 3 jobs to keep them afloat. About learning to cook from her grandmother, who'd run a soul food restaurant before gentrification forced her out. He told her about his own hunger, the pressure of being the first in his family to graduate college, the desperation to prove that his degree wasn't just a piece of paper but a ticket to a different life. So what happens when you make it? She'd asked, 3 drinks in, her guard finally lowered. When you build your empire, then what? Greg had looked at her, really looked at her, and realized he'd been answering that question wrong his entire life. I don't know, he'd admitted. Maybe that's when the real work starts. She'd smiled at that. A real smile, not the practiced one from earlier. I like that answer. They'd started dating the next week. Late nights coding in his cramped studio apartment. Early morning runs along the lakefront. Weekend brunches where they'd argue about everything from tech monopolies to the best deep dish pizza in Chicago. Pequod's, obviously, she'd insisted. Lou Malnati's, he'd countered. They'd agreed to disagree. She made him laugh. Made him think. Made him believe that success didn't mean choosing between ambition and happiness. We're building something real, she'd said one night, curled up in his bed, her fingers tracing patterns on his chest. Not just companies. Us. Something that lasts. Always, he'd promised. 8 months later, he'd proposed at Navy Pier during the summer fireworks show. Got down on one knee right there on the dock. Tourists and families everywhere. His voice shaking as he'd pulled out a ring he'd saved for months to afford. Beverly Perry, I know I'm not perfect. I know I work too much and forget to call and leave my socks on the floor. But I also know that I want to build my life with you. Not just my company, my actual life. Will you marry me? She'd said yes before he'd even finished. He remembered the weight of her in his arms as he lifted her, spinning her around while fireworks exploded overhead. The taste of happy tears on her lips. The way she'd whispered, I choose you, Greg Nelson. Every day, I choose you. He'd believed her. He'd believed in them. Greg stared at the photograph in his hands, that memory now a knife twisting in his gut. 6 months after that proposal, everything had fallen apart. Nelson Technologies had started gaining traction. Real traction. The kind that attracted serious investors with serious money. Greg had been working 100-hour weeks, fueled by coffee and ambition and the intoxicating drug of success. Beverly had been patient at first. Understanding. She had her own business to build, after all. But as the months wore on, as date nights became working dinners and working dinners became, I'm so sorry, I have to cancel, the patience had worn thin. Greg, we haven't had a real conversation in 3 weeks, she'd said one night, standing in the doorway of his office at 11 p.m. I'm starting to forget what your voice sounds like when you're not on a conference call. I know, baby. I'm sorry. Once we close this series, be funding. It's always once this deal closes or after this meeting, or when we hit this milestone. When do we become the priority? He'd looked up from his laptop, exhausted and defensive. This is for us, Bev. Everything I'm building is for our future. What future? Her voice had cracked. The one where we're supposed to get married? Because we haven't even set a date. The one where we're supposed to be partners? Because right now, I feel like I'm competing with your company for your attention. That's not fair. Isn't it? They'd fought. Really fought. The kind of fight where things got said that couldn't be unsaid. But Greg had been too deep in his own ambition to see the cliff edge he was sprinting toward. The final blow had come from his lead investor, Richard Morrison. Gray-haired, ruthlessly pragmatic, worth more money than Greg could conceptualize. Morrison had taken him to lunch at some exclusive club where the steaks cost $200 and came without price tags on the menu. "Greg, I'm going to be blunt with you," Morrison had said, cutting into his ribeye with surgical precision. "You're talented. Your product is solid. But you're distracted." "I'm not." The wedding planning. The fiancé calling during pitch meetings. The fact that you turned down the Hong Kong expansion opportunity because you had commitments. Morrison had set down his fork and looked at Greg with the cold calculation of someone who'd sacrificed everything for success. "You need to make a choice. Do you want to build an empire, or do you want to play house?" "I can do both." "No, you can't." Morrison had leaned forward. "Look around this room. See all these men? Every single one of them chose. They chose power, wealth, legacy. You know what they didn't choose? They didn't choose to be mediocre. And that's what you'll be if you split your focus. Mediocre." The word had stung like a slap. "I'm putting $10 million on the table, Greg. But I need you all in. Not 80%. Not 90%. All in. The wedding, the relationship, that can wait. Success won't. Opportunities like this don't come twice." Greg had sat in that leather chair, surrounded by the trappings of power he dreamed about his entire life, and made the worst decision of his existence. He'd chosen the empire. That night, he tried to explain it to Beverly. Tried to make her understand that it was temporary, that once the company was established, they could get back to planning their future. She'd listened in silence, her face unreadable. "So you're asking me to put my life on hold while you chase yours," she'd said finally. "It's not like that." "That's exactly what it's like, Greg." She'd pulled off her engagement ring, the ring he'd saved for months to buy, and set it on his desk with a soft click that sounded like a door closing. "You don't get to have it both ways. Either I'm your partner, your actual partner, not an afterthought you fit in between meetings, or I'm not. You choose." "Beverly, please." "Choose, Greg." And he had. He'd watched her walk out of his apartment. Heard the door close. Told himself it was temporary, that she'd understand, that he'd make it right once the company succeeded. The next day, he'd been a coward. Instead of calling her, instead of showing up at her door and fixing the most important thing in his life, he'd boxed up her engagement ring, written a note that said, "I need to focus on the company without distractions. I'm sorry. This isn't the right time," and sent it via FedEx. Like she was a business transaction to be closed out. Like 6 years of love could be terminated with a tracking number. His phone had rung 15 times that day. 15 calls from Beverly. He'd stared at her name lighting up his screen and let every single one go to voicemail. Because he was building an empire. Because Richard Morrison said success required sacrifice. Because he was a fool who believed money could fill the hole where his heart should be. Greg dropped the photograph back in the drawer and slammed it shut. 3:47 a.m. now. His laptop was still on his desk, glowing in the darkness. Before he could stop himself, he opened it and searched, Beverly Perry, Chicago. Minimal results. She'd stayed off the grid, mostly. But there, a Facebook page for Beverly's best dogs. The profile picture showed her cart, bright and cheerful, with a handwritten menu board. He scrolled through sparse posts. A photo from 3 years ago showing the twins from behind, their curly heads silhouetted against a sunset. The caption read, "My whole world." No mention of their father. No hint of where they'd come from. Greg's hands trembled as he did the math he'd been avoiding all night. If the twins were 5 years old now, they would have been born 6 years ago. 9 months before that would be. Right after he'd sent the ring back. Right after he'd ended everything. Oh God. Beverly had been pregnant when he'd abandoned her. Had to have been. And she'd called him 15 times that day, probably to tell him. Probably desperate, terrified, needing him. And he'd let every call go to voicemail because he was too busy building an empire. Greg's vision blurred. He realized he was crying. 43 floors above the city he'd conquered, surrounded by luxury that suddenly felt like a cage, Greg Nelson understood with devastating clarity that he'd won everything and lost the only thing that mattered. This is getting intense. If you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? Click that button now. And if you're not going to subscribe, at least tell us why in the comments. We genuinely want to know what would make these stories better for you. By 6 a.m., Greg had made his decision. He called his assistant Margaret before she'd even arrived at the office. She answered on the third ring, voice groggy. "Sir? Is everything okay? It's not even 6. Cancel my meetings. All of them." Silence. Then, "I'm sorry, did you say all of them?" Everything. Board briefing, the investor call, the product review. Clear my schedule for the week. "Sir, the board briefing is about the Q3 earnings. You've never missed." "I'm missing it today." Greg's voice was firm. Final. "Tell them something came up. Family emergency." Another pause. Margaret had been with him for 5 years. She'd never heard him use the word family before. "Of course, sir. Is there anything else you need?" "No. Thank you, Margaret." He hung up and stood, looking at his reflection in the window. The man staring back looked hollow. Expensive watch, designer stubble, dark circles under his eyes that no amount of money could fix. Greg showered, shaved, and for the first time in 6 years, he didn't put on a suit. Jeans. A simple button-down. Casual shoes. He looked like a person instead of a portfolio. In the mirror, he practiced what he'd say to Beverly. How he'd apologize. How he'd explain. But every word felt inadequate, every phrase too small to contain the magnitude of his betrayal. Finally, he just said it aloud. "I'm sorry. I was wrong. Please let me try to make this right." The words echoed in his empty penthouse. At 7 a.m., Greg Nelson left his building, got in his car, and drove back to Millennium Park. Back to the family he didn't know he'd created. Back to the only place that had ever actually felt like home. By 11 a.m., Millennium Park was alive with the lunch crowd. Greg stood at the back of the line at Beverly's cart, his heart hammering against his ribs like it was trying to escape. 15 people ahead of him. 14. 13. He watched Beverly work with the same practiced efficiency he'd witnessed yesterday. She moved like a choreographed dance, bun in the steamer, dog on the grill, condiments in perfect sequence. Erik and Erika flanked her like tiny assistants, the boy handing out napkins with serious concentration, the girl restocking ketchup bottles with a precision that reminded Greg painfully of himself. They wore matching aprons today, miniature versions of Beverly's blue one. Someone had embroidered their names on the chest pockets in red thread. Beverly made those, Greg thought. She sewed their names herself because she couldn't afford custom ones. The realization was another brick in the wall of guilt crushing his chest. 7 people ahead now. 6. Beverly hadn't seen him yet. Or maybe she had and was pointedly ignoring him. He couldn't tell. 3 people. 2. The woman ahead of him ordered and moved aside. Greg stepped forward. Beverly's smile, the warm professional one she'd been giving every customer, vanished the instant she saw him. You again. Her voice was flat. Neutral. Somehow that was worse than anger. Beverly, we need to talk. I'm working. After work then. Please. He hated how desperate he sounded. Hated more that he had no right to ask for anything. I'll wait. Beverly's jaw tightened. Behind her, Erik noticed Greg and tugged on her apron. Mom, it's that man again. The one who looks sad. Several customers in line craned their necks to look. Beverly's eyes flashed, embarrassment mixed with fury. Erik, honey, go organize the napkins. Erika, check if we need more buns from the cooler. The twins scattered, sensing the tension. Beverly leaned forward slightly, voice low enough that only Greg could hear. You can't just show up and disrupt my life because you suddenly feel guilty. These are my working hours. This is how I feed my children. Our children, Greg said quietly. The words hung in the air between them like smoke. Beverly's composure cracked for just a second, a flash of pain so raw that Greg almost stepped back. Then the armor was back, stronger than before. If you're not ordering, step aside. You're holding up my line. 1 Chicago-style dog, Greg said. And I'm sitting right there. He pointed to a bench 20 feet away. I'll wait until you're done. 5 o'clock. 6. Midnight if that's what it takes. Beverly rang up his order without comment. $8. He gave her a 20 and told her to keep the change. She handed him $12 back with deliberate precision. I don't need your charity. I need you gone. But Greg was already walking to the bench. Hours crawled by like wounded animals. Greg sat. And sat. And sat. The lunch rush came and went. Beverly never looked his direction, but he could feel her awareness of him like static electricity. The twins glanced over occasionally, their curiosity obvious. Around 2 p.m., a group of teenage girls took selfies with Beverly's cart, posting enthusiastically about the best dogs in Chicago. Beverly smiled and chatted with them, her whole demeanor transforming. This was her element. These were her people. Greg was an intruder. At 2:47 p.m., Erik approached him. The boy walked with the careful deliberation of someone who'd been told not to talk to strangers, but was too curious to resist. He stopped about 5 feet away, studying Greg with those hazel eyes. My eyes, Greg thought desperately, that were so unsettlingly familiar. Why are you watching us? Erik asked. No preamble. Just direct, childlike honesty. Greg's throat closed. How did you answer that? Because you're my son, and I didn't know you existed, and I'm trying to figure out how to be part of your life without destroying it further? I used to know your mother, Greg managed. A long time ago. Are you a friend? The question pierced him. Was he a friend? Could you be friends with someone whose life you derailed? Whose trust you'd shattered? Who'd been forced to raise your children alone because you were too obsessed with success to answer your phone? I'd like to be, Greg said carefully. Erik tilted his head, considering this. Do you work at a bank? You dress like the bank people. I know. I run a technology company. What's that? We make apps. Software. Things that help people use computers and phones better. Erik's face lit up with recognition. Like games. Sometimes. Mostly business stuff. That sounds boring. Despite everything, Greg almost laughed. Yeah, buddy. Sometimes it really is. Erik. Beverly's voice cut across the park like a whip. Come here. Now. Erik jumped slightly, then shrugged at Greg with the universal kid gesture of adults are weird. He trotted back to the cart. Greg watched Beverly bend down to her son's level, her hands on his shoulders, speaking urgently. Erika joined them, and Beverly gathered both children close, her body language screaming protection. Her eyes met Greg's across the distance, a warning shot. Touch my children again without permission, and we're done. Message received. At 4:30 p.m., dark clouds rolled in from the lake with the speed that only Chicago weather could manage. The temperature dropped 10 degrees in minutes. Tourists scattered, searching for cover. Beverly looked at the sky and swore under her breath. Greg could see her lips move even from 20 feet away. She started securing loose items on her cart, moving with the efficiency of someone who'd weathered too many sudden storms. Greg stood and walked over before she could tell him not to. I don't need your help, Beverly said without looking at him. I know. Greg grabbed one end of a tarp she was struggling with. But I'm giving it anyway. For a moment, he thought she'd refuse. Tell him to leave. Throw the tarp at his face. Instead, she thrust the other end at him with unnecessary force. Fine. Make yourself useful. They worked in tense silence, battening down the cart against the incoming weather. Greg's designer jeans got dirty. His button-down shirt caught on a metal edge and tore slightly. He didn't care. The first drops fell fat and heavy, splattering on the pavement like warnings. Mom, I'm cold. Erika's voice was small, worried. The sky opened up. Within seconds, the sprinkle became a deluge. The kind of Chicago thunderstorm that turned streets into rivers and sent everyone running for cover. The pavilion. Beverly shouted over the sudden roar of rain. She grabbed the twins' hands and ran. Greg pushed her cart, the wheels fighting him on the wet pavement. By the time he reached the covered pavilion, a concrete structure with a roof and open sides, he was soaked through. Beverly and the twins huddled in the corner. Erika was shivering, her yellow t-shirt dark with rain. Erik's curly hair was plastered to his head. Without thinking, Greg shrugged out of his button-down, leaving just his white undershirt. He handed the shirt to Erika. Here. It's not much, but... Erika looked at her mother for permission. Beverly stared at the shirt like it might bite her, then gave a tiny nod. The little girl wrapped herself in it. It swallowed her, the sleeves hanging past her hands, but it was dry and warm. Thank you, mister, Erika said softly. Greg's heart cracked a little more. Beverly watched this exchange with an expression he couldn't read. Something in her eyes softened, just barely, just for a moment, before the armor came back up. The rain pounded the pavilion roof like drumbeats. The twins, their initial fear fading, gravitated toward the driest corner and started playing some hand-clapping game, their voices a melodic counterpoint to the storm. Greg and Beverly stood on opposite sides of the pavilion, 12 feet of rain-soaked concrete between them. Finally, Beverly spoke. Why are you here, Greg? The question was simple. The answer was impossibly complicated. Because I saw you yesterday. Saw them. And he ran his hands through his wet hair, struggling for words. Beverly, are they mine? The twins were distracted, their game animated and loud. The rain provided cover. This was as private a moment as they'd get. Beverly's face did something complicated. Pain and anger and resignation all fighting for dominance. When she finally answered, her voice was barely audible over the storm. What do you think? She gestured toward the children. Look at them. Really look at them. Greg did. Erik laughing, his left dimple pronounced. Erika concentrating on the hand game, her cowlick visible despite the rain. Their hazel eyes. The shape of their faces. The way they moved. They were Nelson's. No question. When did you find out? His voice cracked. Beverly's laugh was bitter. 2 weeks after you FedExed my ring back like I was a returned Amazon package. I was late. Took a test. Positive. Actually, 3 tests because I couldn't believe it. She wrapped her arms around herself. I called you. Do you remember that day? 15 calls, Greg whispered. 15. Beverly's eyes glistened. I was terrified, excited, overwhelmed. I thought maybe the baby would change things. Make you realize what we had was worth more than Series B funding. She swiped at her eyes angrily. I was so stupid. You weren't. You never answered, Greg. Not one call. Eventually I figured out the message. You didn't want me, so why would you want my baby? She took a shaky breath. Except surprise, babies. Plural. Found that out at my first ultrasound. Twins. Just my luck, right? Greg felt like he'd been gutted. Beverly, I didn't know. That's the point. Her voice rose, echoing in the pavilion. The twins looked over, concerned. Beverly lowered her voice again, but the intensity remained. You didn't know because you didn't want to know. You made your choice. You chose your company, your empire, your success. She spat the last word like a curse. Wow. Drop a comment right now. Hashtag Team Greg or hashtag Team Beverly. Who do you think is right here? So I chose 2, Beverly continued, her voice steadier now. Colder. I chose not to trap you with obligation. I chose not to be the reason you resented your children. I chose to raise them alone, to let them have a mother who wanted them completely instead of a father who stayed out of guilt. I would have come back. Out of duty. The word exploded from her. Don't you get it? I didn't want you to come back because you felt responsible. I wanted you to come back because you loved me more than your board meetings. Because I mattered more than your investors. Because her voice broke. Because we were supposed to be your dream too. Silence. Just the rain and the distant sound of the twins playing. Tell me about them, Greg said finally. Please. I want to know everything. Beverly looked at him for a long moment, weighing something. Then she sighed, the fight draining out of her momentarily. Erik came first. By 2 minutes. Screamed his head off the second he hit the air. A tiny smile. Erika was quieter. Just looked around like she was taking inventory. They've been like that ever since. He's the emotional one. She's the thinker. What were their first words? Beverly's smile turned sad. Erik said mama at 9 months. Erika said no at 10 months. Fitting, isn't it? One looking for connection. One declaring independence. She glanced at her children, her expression softening. Erik had colic for 4 months. I didn't sleep more than 2 hours at a time. Erika learned to walk at 10 months and immediately started running away from me in stores. I had to get one of those child leashes. Do you know how judged you get as a single black mother with your toddler on a leash? Greg's throat closed. They started kindergarten this year, Beverly continued. Erik loves art. Erika loves math. They fight over everything. Who sits where, who gets the red cup, who gets to help me at the cart. But if anyone messes with one of them, The other one becomes a tiny warrior. They sound incredible. They are. Beverly's voice was fierce. I raised incredible children. By myself. With no money, no help, no support. I worked 3 jobs when they were babies. Catering in the morning, food delivery in the afternoon, bartending at night. My neighbor Mrs. Chun watched them because I couldn't afford real daycare. I learned to survive on 4 hours of sleep and dollar store coffee. Each sentence was an indictment. Each word a reminder of what Greg had missed, what he'd forced her to endure alone. The hot dog cart. Greg asked. 2 years ago. Saved for 3 years to buy it. It's mine. No loans, no investors. No one who can take it away. Erik and Erika help me after school. We're a team. She looked at him directly. We're a family. And we don't need you. The words landed like physical blows. But they deserve to know their father, Greg said desperately. Do they? Beverly's eyes were hard again. Do they deserve to know the man who abandoned their pregnant mother? Who chose money over people? Who's probably only here now because his conscience finally woke up? I deserve that. All of it. But they don't deserve to grow up not knowing me. They've been growing up fine. Have they asked about me? About their dad? Beverly's silence was answer enough. They have, haven't they? Greg stepped closer. What did you tell them? The truth. That their father wasn't ready to be a father. That some people aren't meant for family. That's not, Greg stopped. That's fair. The rain was slowing. The storm passing as quickly as it had arrived. Beverly gathered the twins, who ran over trailing Greg's shirt. Erika tried to give it back, but Greg shook his head. Keep it. You need it more than I do. Beverly started breaking down the cart storm coverings, preparing to leave. Greg helped without asking, and this time she didn't refuse. Can I see them again? Greg asked as she prepared to push her cart home. Please. I'm not asking to be their father overnight. I'm asking for a chance. To prove I'm not that man anymore. Beverly looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time since the rain started. Studying his face like she was searching for something she'd lost. Why now, Greg? Why after 6 years do you suddenly care? Because I saw them. And I saw you. And I realized that every success I've had, every dollar I've made, every deal I've closed, none of it means anything if I don't have this. He gestured to the twins, to her, to the cart. This is real. Everything else is just numbers on a screen. Pretty words from a pretty rich man. I know I don't deserve another chance. But they deserve to know who their father is. Even if that person is someone I'm not proud of. Even if I have to spend the rest of my life earning their trust. He met her eyes. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking for the opportunity to show you I've changed. Beverly was quiet for a long time. The twins, sensing the moment's importance, stood quietly by the cart. Finally, Beverly spoke. Prove it. What? You say you've changed. Prove it. She started pushing her cart. You know where my cart is. You want to be part of their lives? Show up. Not with money or grand gestures. Just show up. Do the work. Be present. And maybe we'll see. She walked away, the twins following. Erika still clutched Greg's shirt. Erik turned back once, gave Greg a little wave. Greg waved back, his vision blurring. As they disappeared into the evening crowd, Greg stood in the pavilion, soaked and exhausted and more hopeful than he'd been in 6 years. She hadn't said no. She'd said prove it. and Greg Nelson intended to prove it every day for the rest of his life. Greg didn't sleep that night either, but this time it was different. This time he was planning. By 6 a.m., he'd made 17 calls, sent 30 emails, and set in motion what he was certain would fix everything. "Margaret," he said into his phone, pacing his penthouse in pajamas and determination. "I need a commercial real estate agent. The best in Chicago. And a contractor, someone who specializes in restaurant build-outs." "Sir, it's 6 in the morning. What's this about?" "I'm setting up a restaurant. For someone." For someone. Margaret's confusion was palpable. In 5 years, she'd never heard him mention doing anything for anyone outside of business contexts. "Yes. I need options by noon. Lincoln Park, Wicker Park, West Loop. Somewhere with foot traffic. Class A space. Budget." Greg paused. "No budget. Just find the perfect space." By noon, he had 12 options. By 2 p.m., he'd narrowed it to 3. By 4 p.m., he was standing in a gorgeous corner unit in Lincoln Park. Exposed brick, floor-to-ceiling windows, industrial fixtures, 2,000 square feet of pure potential. "It's perfect," he told his real estate agent, Rachel Chun. "I'll take it." "Don't you want to know the terms? First and last month's rent, build-out costs, permits. Whatever it costs. Draw up the papers." Rachel blinked. "Mr. Nelson, this is a minimum $50,000 commitment for the first 6 months, not including renovations." "Perfect." Greg pulled out his checkbook, the personal one, not business, and wrote a check for exactly that amount. "When can we start renovations?" "Sir, don't you want the person you're doing this for to see the space first? Get their input?" "No. I want it to be a surprise." Warning bells should have been ringing. They weren't. By 7 p.m., Greg had signed a lease, hired a contractor, and scheduled a walkthrough with an equipment supplier. He'd even commissioned a sign, "Beverly's Gourmet Dogs," where every bite tells a story. He sat in his car outside Beverly's apartment building in Pilsen. Margaret had found the address through distressingly easy database searches, staring at the check in his hands. This was it. The grand gesture. The way to prove he was serious. His phone buzzed. "Margaret. Sir, should I ask? Maybe run this by Ms. Perry first? Make sure this is something she wants." Greg texted back, "She's too proud to accept help. I'm presenting it as a done deal. Trust me." This feels like a bad idea. It's a $50,000 gift. What could go wrong? Margaret didn't respond. In hindsight, the silence was an omen. The next morning, Greg arrived at Beverly's apartment at 10 a.m. with his entourage. Rachel, the real estate agent, with her tablet full of beautiful photos. Mike, the contractor, with his portfolio of successful restaurant builds, and his own overwhelming certainty that he was about to change Beverly's life. He knocked. Beverly answered the door in flannel pajama pants and a Howard University t-shirt, her hair wrapped in a silk bonnet. Behind her, the twins were eating cereal at a small kitchen table, cartoon voices drifting from a TV that had seen better years. Her expression went from sleepy confusion to immediate suspicion. "Greg? What are you? It's Sunday morning. What is this?" She looked at the two strangers behind him. "Who are they?" "Beverly, I have something incredible to show you." Greg couldn't contain his enthusiasm. He pulled out his tablet and pulled up photos. "I found you a restaurant space. It's perfect. Lincoln Park, corner unit, huge windows, room for a full kitchen setup." "You did what?" "I know you've been working so hard with the cart, but you deserve more. You deserve a real restaurant. He pulled out the check with a flourish. I already signed the lease. It's yours. Beverly stared at the check, at the tablet showing the gorgeous storefront, at Greg's expectant face. Then she looked at Rachel and Mike, who were suddenly very interested in their shoes. You signed a lease, Beverly said slowly. For a restaurant. Without asking me. I wanted it to be a surprise. Get inside. Now. She grabbed Greg's arm and pulled him into the apartment, shutting the door on Rachel and Mike. They stood awkwardly in the hallway. Inside, Beverly's home was small but immaculately kept. Thrift store furniture arranged with care. Children's artwork taped to walls. A life built from nothing that somehow felt more real than Greg's penthouse ever had. The twins looked up from their cereal, sensing tension. Erik, Erika, go to your room. Now. But Mom. Now. The twins scrambled, closing their bedroom door with wide-eyed concern. Beverly turned to Greg, and for the first time since he'd found her again, she didn't look hurt or guarded or resigned. She looked furious. You did what? Her voice was quiet. Deadly. I got you a restaurant space. I know the cart is hard work, and I thought. You thought. Beverly's voice rose. You thought you could swoop in with your money and fix my life like I'm some kind of charity project? That's not. Do you have any idea how insulting this is? She snatched the check from his hands. $50,000. For what? To ease your guilt? To buy your way into my children's lives? I was trying to help. No. She jabbed a finger at his chest. You were trying to control. To fix. To make yourself feel better about the fact that you abandoned me when I was pregnant with your children. Beverly, please, I just wanted to give you opportunities. Opportunities. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. You think I don't have opportunities? You think I'm stuck with a hot dog cart because I failed? Because I couldn't do better? I didn't say. I chose the cart, Greg. Beverly was shaking now, 6 years of suppressed rage finally erupting. I chose it because it's mine. Because I own it outright. No debt, no investors. No one who can take it away when I miss a payment. I chose it because it's flexible. I can work around my children's school schedule. I chose it because Erik and Erika can help me, learn about business, be part of something we built together as a family. She tore the check in half, then in quarters, then into tiny pieces that fluttered to the floor like confetti. My hot dog cart isn't something to fix. It's my pride. It's my survival. It's proof that I didn't need your billions to raise incredible kids. I did it with my own hands, my own sweat, my own determination. Greg stood frozen, watching his grand gesture literally torn to pieces. You want to know what I need? Beverly's voice dropped again, but the intensity remained. I need you to see me, to respect me, to understand that I built a life without you. Not despite you, because of your absence. I made myself into someone who doesn't need saving. I wasn't trying to save you. Yes, you were. That's all you rich people know how to do. Throw money at problems. Buy solutions. Hire away discomfort. She kicked at the check pieces. You think money erases 6 years of raising kids alone? You think you can buy your way into their lives with a restaurant lease? I just wanted to help. Help would have been answering your phone 6 years ago. Help would have been being there when I went into labor a month early and almost died because my blood pressure spiked. Help would have been the 1,000 sleepless nights when Erik screamed with colic and I had no one to tag out with. Help would have been the first day of kindergarten when both kids cried and I had to be strong for all three of us. Tears streamed down her face now. Help is not a check and a lease agreement. Help is presence. And you haven't earned the right to give me anything else. The bedroom door cracked open. Erika peeked out, her face worried. Mommy? Are you okay? Beverly wiped her eyes quickly. I'm fine, baby. Close the door. The door shut. When Beverly looked at Greg again, the fire had dimmed to cold disappointment. You need to leave. Beverly, I'm sorry. I didn't mean. You never do. That's the problem. She walked to the door, opened it. Rachel and Mike were still standing there, looking mortified. Tell your friends the deal is off. The lease is void. Whatever paperwork you signed, unsigned it. I can't just, the deposit is non-refundable. Then you just wasted $50,000. Congratulations. She held the door wider. Leave. Greg walked to the threshold, then turned back. Please. Tell me how to fix this. You can't fix it, Greg. That's what you don't understand. You can't throw money at pain and expect it to heal. You can't buy trust. You can't purchase love. She looked at him with something that might have been pity. I gave you a chance yesterday. I told you to prove you changed. And the first thing you did was exactly what the old Greg would have done. You tried to control the situation with your wealth. I'll do better. You're right. I'm sorry. Tell me how to actually help. Beverly considered this. When she spoke, her voice was measured. Careful. If you want to be part of their lives, you start by learning our lives. You don't change them. You don't upgrade them. You show up and do the actual work of being present. Okay. How? Tomorrow morning. 7 a.m. My cart. If you're serious about this, you show up and help me set up. You learn what my days actually look like. You meet my world on my terms. I'll be there. We'll see. She started to close the door. Beverly. She paused. I really am sorry. I know, she said quietly. But sorry isn't enough. Actions are what matter. The door closed. Greg stood in the hallway, his entourage watching him with varying degrees of discomfort. So, Rachel said carefully, should I cancel the lease? Cancel everything. The deposit. Consider it a very expensive lesson, Greg said. He pulled out his phone and texted his lawyer. Make sure Ms. Perry isn't liable for any of this. Eat the losses on my end. Margaret's text came through, told you it was a bad idea. Greg looked at the pieces of check on the floor, visible through the crack under Beverly's door. Yeah, you did. Beverly is not holding back. Tell us in the comments, has anyone ever tried to fix your problems with money instead of actually listening to you? We want to hear your stories. And seriously, subscribe if you haven't already. That night, Greg did something he hadn't done since college. He set an alarm for 5:30 a.m. Not for a board meeting. Not for an investor call. Not for empire building. To help his ex-fiancée set up a hot dog cart. He showered at 6, stood in his closet staring at rows of designer suits, and pulled out jeans and a t-shirt instead. Clothes that could get dirty. Clothes for actual work. At 6:45 a.m., he was in his car, driving to Millennium Park with coffee from a drive-thru instead of his usual Italian espresso machine brew. The city was just waking up. Street sweepers cleaning boulevards. Early joggers on the lakefront. A whole world he'd never seen because he'd been too busy sleeping in his tower, preparing for power breakfasts and market openings. At 6:58 a.m., he parked near the spot where Beverly usually set up. She was already there, pulling her cart into position with the help of an older Asian woman. Beverly saw him and stopped, surprise flickering across her face. Like she genuinely hadn't expected him to show up. Greg got out of the car and walked over, his hands in his pockets to keep from fidgeting. "Good morning," he said. "I'm here. Tell me what to do." Beverly studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded to her companion. "Mrs. Chun, this is Greg. He's going to help today." She looked at Greg. "Mrs. Chun is my neighbor. She's been helping me with the twins since they were babies." Mrs. Chun looked Greg up and down with a sharp assessment of someone who'd seen everything. "So you're the father?" "Ah, yes, ma'am." She patted Beverly's arm. "I'll see you this afternoon for pickup. Be good, Beverly." As Mrs. Chun walked away, Beverly handed Greg a box of supplies from under the cart. "Start by setting up the condiments. Ketchup, mustard, relish, onions. There's a specific order." "What order?" "Figure it out. Part of learning is making mistakes." So Greg set up the condiments. Wrong. Beverly made him do it again. And again. And a fourth time until he finally got the sequence right. Then she showed him how to prep the buns, how to organize the hot dogs by type, how to set up the money box, how to position napkins for easy access. His back ached from bending over. His hands smelled like onions and relish. His jeans got splattered with water from the ice tub. It was 7:45 a.m. "Not bad," Beverly said. "You only messed up 6 things instead of 10. Tomorrow you'll do better." "Tomorrow?" "You said you wanted to prove you changed. This is how. Show up. Every day. Learn the work." She looked at him directly. No shortcuts. No buying your way out of the hard parts. Just presence. Greg nodded. "Okay. Same time tomorrow." 6:30. "I need to start earlier on Tuesdays." "I'll be here." Beverly turned to prepare for opening, then paused. Without looking at him, she said quietly, "Thank you. For showing up." It was the first kind thing she'd said to him in 6 years. Greg held onto those words like a lifeline all the way home. He showed up the next day. And the next. And the one after that. For 2 weeks straight, Greg Nelson, Billionaire CEO of Nelson Technologies, reported to Millennium Park at 6:30 a.m. to help his ex-fiancée set up a hot dog cart. He learned that setting up took 90 minutes of careful preparation. He learned the names of regular customers. Janet wanted extra onions. Marcus always asked for 2 dogs plain. The college students on Thursdays liked maximum toppings. He learned that Erika was better at math than Erik, but Erik could charm customers into buying extra. He learned that Beverly hummed while she worked, an unconscious habit she'd always had. He learned that she still preferred her coffee black with 1 sugar, just like he remembered. He learned what actual work looked like when money couldn't do it for you. On the 14th morning, while prepping the condiment station, Erik walked up to him. "Are you going to marry my mom?" the boy asked, direct as always. Greg nearly dropped the relish jar. "I what?" "You're here every day. You help her. You smile at her funny. Mrs. Chun says that means you like her." "It's complicated, buddy." "Do you like her?" "Very much." "Then why don't you tell her?" Greg looked at Beverly across the cart, efficiently organizing hot dogs, completely focused on her work. Even in a grease-stained apron and worn jeans, she was the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. Because sometimes liking someone isn't enough. Sometimes you have to prove you're worthy of being liked back. Erik considered this with a seriousness only children can muster. My teacher says saying sorry is important. I did say sorry. But did you mean it? Like, really mean it? Because my teacher says sorry doesn't count if you keep doing the bad thing. Greg crouched down to Erik's level. You're right. And I really mean it. That's why I'm here. To show your mom I'm not just saying words, I'm doing the work. Erik nodded, satisfied. Then he leaned in conspiratorially. She likes you too. She pretends she doesn't, but I heard her tell Mrs. Chen you're frustratingly persistent. She only says frustrating about things she actually likes. Before Greg could respond, Beverly called out, Erik. Stop bothering Greg and check if we need more napkins. Erik ran off, leaving Greg with a tiny spark of hope. She likes you too. Maybe. Maybe eventually. He stood, rolled up his sleeves, and got back to work. Setting up condiments. Being present. Earning his place, one hot dog at a time. 3 weeks into Greg's daily appearances at Beverly's cart, he'd established something close to a routine. 6:30 a.m., arrive at the park, help set up. 7:30 a.m., Beverly's cart opened for business. 9 a.m., Greg left for his actual job, usually taking a conference call in his car on the way. 5 p.m., returned to help pack up, though Beverly usually shooed him away before then. It wasn't much, but it was something. The twins had gotten used to him. Erik now waved every morning without prompting. Erika had started asking him math questions, delighting when he got them wrong. Beverly had stopped looking surprised when he showed up. Progress. Microscopic, but real. On a Thursday morning, week 4, day 3 of Greg's redemption project, he arrived to find Beverly staring at a letter, her face drained of color. Bev? What's wrong? She jumped, stuffed the letter under a towel. Nothing. Just nothing. That's not nothing. You look like you've seen a ghost. I said I'm fine. But her hands shook as she pulled out the hot dog supplies. Greg didn't push. They set up in tense silence. But when Beverly dropped the same container of relish twice, something she'd never done in all the mornings he'd watched her work, he gently took it from her hands. Talk to me. Please. Beverly closed her eyes. When she opened them, they glistened with unshed tears. New city ordinance. All park vendors need updated licenses, health certifications, liability insurance. She pulled out the letter, thrust it at him. $3,000. Due in 30 days. Or they revoke my permit. Greg scanned the document. Official city letterhead. Bureaucratic language. A price tag that probably meant nothing to most established businesses, but everything to someone operating on margins as thin as Beverly's. I can. No. Her voice was sharp. Don't even say it. Beverly, $3,000. Is all my savings. I know. She laughed bitterly. Spent 3 years saving for this cart. Was saving up to get Erik's asthma medication covered better, to get Erika's dental work done. Now it's all going to permits and certificates and liability insurance. She slumped against the cart, the weight of it crushing her. For the first time since Greg had found her again, Beverly looked defeated. They've been trying to push us out for months, she said quietly. The artisan food vendors. That's what they call us. But really we're just people trying to survive, and the city wants expensive restaurants that pay higher fees. She looked at the letter like it was a death sentence. I can't lose this cart, Greg. It's how I feed my kids. Erik and Erika arrived with Mrs. Chun, their backpacks bouncing. They took one look at their mother's face and went quiet. "Mommy." Erika's small voice. "Are you sad?" "No, baby. Mommy's just tired." Beverly forced a smile. "Go say hi to Mrs. Chun. I'll see you after school." The twins hugged her and left, both glancing back with worried expressions. Once they were gone, Beverly let the mask slip again. She pressed her palms to her eyes. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "You didn't sign up for my problems." "Yes, I did," Greg said firmly. "The second I decided to be part of your lives, I signed up for all of it. The good and the hard." He paused, choosing his words carefully. He'd learned enough in 3 weeks to know that offering money was the wrong answer. "I can't give you money, you won't take it. But I can help with the paperwork. Navigate the bureaucracy. Make calls. Whatever you need that isn't a check." Beverly looked at him through her fingers. "Why would you do that?" "Because you're right. Presence matters. Help isn't money, it's showing up." He held up the letter. "So let me show up for this." She was quiet for a long moment. Pride warred with necessity on her face. Finally, necessity won. "Okay," she said, so quietly he almost missed it. "Help me with the paperwork." The Chicago Parks Department bureaucracy was its own circle of hell. Greg spent the next 3 days in various city offices, Beverly beside him, navigating a labyrinth of requirements that seemed designed to break the spirit of anyone who dared try. "You need a health inspection certificate," said clerk number 1 at the health department. "To get that, you need an updated food handler's license," said clerk number 2 at the same department, different floor. "The food handler's license requires you to take a class," said clerk number 3 at yet another building. "The class isn't available for 6 weeks, said the instructor. "But you can pay $500 to expedite. For the liability insurance, you'll need a business license," said the insurance agent. "Your business license renewal requires proof of the health inspection you don't have yet," said clerk number 4 back at the original building. It was circular, frustrating, clearly designed to drive people away. But Greg had spent a decade in corporate America dealing with red tape. And more importantly, he'd learned the secret weapon of bureaucracy navigation: ruthless patience. They waited in line for 4 hours at the health department. 3 weeks into Greg's daily appearances at Beverly's cart, he'd established something close to a routine. 6:30 a.m., arrive at the park, help set up. 7:30 a.m., Beverly's cart opened for business. 9 a.m., Greg left for his actual job, usually taking a conference call in his car on the way. 5 p.m., returned to help pack up, though Beverly usually shooed him away before then. It wasn't much, but it was something. The twins had gotten used to him. Erik now waved every morning without prompting. Erika had started asking him math questions, delighting when he got them wrong. Beverly had stopped looking surprised when he showed up. Progress. Microscopic, but real. On a Thursday morning, week 4, day 3 of Greg's redemption project, he arrived to find Beverly staring at a letter, her face drained of color. "Bev? What's wrong?" She jumped, stuffed the letter under a towel. "Nothing. Just nothing." "That's not nothing. You look like you've seen a ghost." I said I'm fine. But her hands shook as she pulled out the hot dog supplies. Greg didn't push. They sat up in tense silence. But when Beverly dropped the same container of relish twice, something she'd never done in all the mornings he'd watched her work, he gently took it from her hands. "Talk to me, please." Beverly closed her eyes. When she opened them, they glistened with unshed tears. New city ordinance. All park vendors need updated licenses, health certifications, liability insurance. She pulled out the letter, thrust it at him. $3,000. Due in 30 days. Or they revoke my permit. Greg scanned the document. Official city letterhead. Bureaucratic language. A price tag that probably meant nothing to most established businesses, but everything to someone operating on margins as thin as Beverly's. I can. No. Her voice was sharp. Don't even say it. Beverly, $3,000. Is all my savings. I know. She laughed bitterly. Spent 3 years saving for this cart. Was saving up to get Eric's asthma medication covered better, to get Erika's dental work done. Now it's all going to permits and certificates and liability insurance. She slumped against the cart, the weight of it crushing her. For the first time since Greg had found her again, Beverly looked defeated. They've been trying to push us out for months, she said quietly. The artisan food vendors. That's what they call us. But really we're just people trying to survive, and the city wants expensive restaurants that pay higher fees. She looked at the letter like it was a death sentence. I can't lose this cart, Greg. It's how I feed my kids. Erik and Erika arrived with Mrs. Chun, their backpacks bouncing. They took one look at their mother's face and went quiet. Mommy. Erika's small voice. Are you sad? No, baby. Mommy's just tired. Beverly forced a smile. Go say hi to Mrs. Chun. I'll see you after school. The twins hugged her and left, both glancing back with worried expressions. Once they were gone, Beverly let the mask slip again. She pressed her palms to her eyes. I'm sorry, she whispered. You didn't sign up for my problems. Yes, I did, Greg said firmly. The second I decided to be part of your lives, I signed up for all of it. The good and the hard. He paused, choosing his words carefully. He'd learned enough in 3 weeks to know that offering money was the wrong answer. I can't give you money, you won't take it. But I can help with the paperwork. Navigate the bureaucracy. Make calls. Whatever you need that isn't a check. Beverly looked at him through her fingers. Why would you do that? Because you're right. Presence matters. Help isn't money, it's showing up. He held up the letter. So let me show up for this. She was quiet for a long moment. Pride warred with necessity on her face. Finally, necessity won. Okay, she said, so quietly he almost missed it. Help me with the paperwork. The Chicago Parks Department bureaucracy was its own circle of hell. Greg spent the next 3 days in various city offices, Beverly beside him, navigating a labyrinth of requirements that seemed designed to break the spirit of anyone who dared try. You need a health inspection certificate, said clerk number 1 at the health department. To get that, you need an updated food handler's license, said clerk number 2 at the same department, different floor. The food handler's license requires you to take a class, said clerk number 3 at yet another building. The class isn't available for 6 weeks, said the instructor. But you can pay $500 to expedite. For the liability insurance, you'll need a business license, said the insurance agent. Your business license renewal requires proof of the health inspection you don't have yet, said clerk number 4 back at the original building. It was circular, frustrating, clearly designed to drive people away. But Greg had spent a decade in corporate America dealing with red tape. And more importantly, he'd learned the secret weapon of bureaucracy navigation, ruthless patience. They waited in line for 4 hours at the health department. They filled out the same form 3 times because different clerks wanted different information. They got transferred between departments 7 times in one day. Greg saw firsthand what Beverly had been dealing with alone for years. A system that didn't care if you succeeded or failed, that treated your dream like an inconvenience, that made survival feel like punishment. On the third day, while waiting for yet another clerk to process yet another form, they sat on the city hall steps eating street tacos from a vendor Beverly knew. "This is absurd," Greg said, biting into his taco. "Chicken, cilantro, lime. Simple and perfect. Welcome to my world." Beverly smiled tiredly. "Now you see why your $50,000 restaurant seemed insulting. You think I haven't tried to expand? I've spent 2 years navigating this system just to keep my cart running. A full restaurant." She shook her head. "The permits alone would take years and cost more than I'll make in a lifetime." Greg felt a fresh wave of shame. His grand gesture hadn't just been tone-deaf. It had been ignorant of the actual challenges Beverly faced daily. "This is the most you've ever actually helped me," Beverly said, echoing words she'd said weeks ago. "Not fixed. Helped. You're seeing my reality instead of trying to change it. I should have done this 6 years ago." "Yeah, you should have." She took a bite of her taco. "But you're doing it now. That's something." It was the closest thing to forgiveness she'd offered. Greg held onto it like gold. Can we get 1,000 comments on this video? Tell us what local time it is where you are and whether you're #Team Second Chances. If this story is touching your heart, that subscribe button is calling your name. Nelson Technologies CEO accused of embezzlement, $5 million investigation launched. His hands went numb. The article detailed how his former business partner, Marcus Webb, had leaked emails allegedly showing Greg systematically embezzling company funds over 3 years. The emails looked authentic: routing numbers, transfer authorizations, offshore accounts. All fake. But convincingly fake. "Greg." Beverly touched his arm. "What's wrong? You look like you're going to pass out." He couldn't speak. Just handed her the phone. Beverly read, her expression shifting from concern to shock. "They're saying you stole from your own company." "I didn't." "Marcus is." Greg's mind raced. "He's been trying to force me out for months. I didn't think he'd actually." His phone rang. His CFO. "David, this is insane. I never." "The board's voting tonight," David interrupted, his voice tight. "They're suspending you pending investigation." "Greg, this looks really bad. The documentation Marcus provided is extremely detailed." "It's all fabricated." "I believe you. But the board doesn't. Half of them already wanted Marcus as CEO instead of you. This gives them the excuse they needed." David paused. "I'm sorry, man. I'll do what I can, but..." The call ended. Over the next hour, sitting in that waiting room while Beverly watched in horror, Greg's empire crumbled in real time. Investors pulled funding. Clients canceled contracts. Partners issued statements, distancing themselves pending the outcome of investigations. The tech community, which had celebrated him, turned on him with the vicious speed of sharks smelling blood. By evening, the board had voted. Greg Nelson was suspended as CEO, effective immediately. Marcus Webb was appointed interim CEO. The hostile takeover was complete. Greg sat on the steps of City Hall as the sun set, his phone silent now because no one wanted to talk to the disgraced CEO. Beverly sat beside him, their insurance paperwork forgotten. "I didn't do it," he said numbly. "I swear to you, I didn't." "I believe you." He looked at her, surprised. "You do. I know you, Greg. You're a lot of things: foolish, prideful, too focused on success, but you're not a thief." She squeezed his hand. Besides, I've watched you for 3 weeks. You've been here every morning at 6:30, helping me with a hot dog cart. A man embezzling millions doesn't show up to portion out relish. Despite everything, Greg almost laughed. What do I do? The question came out broken. Everything I built, it's gone. Just gone. You fight back. You prove them wrong. How? Marcus has the board, the evidence, the company. The same way you proved yourself to me. One day at a time. Showing up. Doing the work. She stood, pulled him to his feet. But right now, we have insurance paperwork to file. Your crisis doesn't stop mine. Come on. She dragged him back into the building. And somehow, impossibly, filling out forms in triplicate while his career burned down around him, Greg felt strangely grounded. Because Beverly believed him. Because she stayed. Because for the first time in his life, someone chose him when he had nothing to offer except his presence. The next morning, Greg showed up at 6:30 a.m. as usual. He expected Beverly to tell him not to come, that he had bigger problems to deal with. Instead, she handed him a box of hot dog buns and said, "You're 10 minutes late. We have work to do." So they worked. The news vans arrived around 8 a.m. Mr. Nelson. Mr. Nelson. Can you comment on the embezzlement allegations? Is it true you've been hiding from your investors? Are these your secret children? Cameras swarmed the cart. Beverly pushed the twins behind her protectively, her face fierce. Greg started to respond, but Beverly cut him off. He has no comment, she said firmly. And this is private property. Leave. Ms. Perry, is it true you're the mother of Greg Nelson's illegitimate children? My children aren't illegitimate. And if you don't leave, I'm calling security. But our viewers want to know, is the disgraced CEO also a deadbeat dad? That's when Greg snapped. He stepped forward, ready to physically remove the reporter. Beverly grabbed his arm. Don't. They want you to react. But the damage was spreading. Within an hour, the story had morphed in. Embezzlement CEO hiding secret family, hot dog vendor and twin children discovered. Beverly's cart became a media circus. Customers stopped coming. No one wanted to buy hot dogs while cameras shoved in their faces. The twins were terrified, clinging to their mother. And through it all, Beverly stood her ground, protecting her space, her children, her dignity. That afternoon, when she finally closed the cart early because the media made work impossible, she found Greg sitting on their usual bench, head in his hands. Go home, she said softly. Handle your business. We'll be okay. I brought this to your door. The media, the attention. You didn't bring it. That Marcus person did. You're just dealing with the fallout. She sat beside him. But you need to fight this. Don't let him take everything you built. I don't care about the company anymore. You should. Not because of the money or the status, but because it's yours. You built it. Don't let someone steal it just because you're distracted by trying to earn your way into my life. She looked at him directly. Fight for your company, Greg. And then when you win, you can come back here and keep helping with condiment prep. What if I don't win? Then you come back anyway and help with condiment prep. She smiled slightly. Either way, you show up. That's what matters. That night, Erika had an asthma attack. Beverly called Greg at 8 p.m., her voice panicked in a way he'd never heard. I can't reach Mrs. Chun. Erika's bad, really bad. Eric's here and I can't leave him and the ambulance is 10 minutes away, but she needs to go now. I'm coming. Where are you? Children's Memorial. But I need someone to. I'll get Erik. Give me your address. I'll bring him to the hospital. Greg broke every traffic law getting to Beverly's apartment. He found Erik standing in the hallway, tears streaming down his face. Is Erika going to die? The boy asked. No, buddy. She's going to be fine. But your mom needs us. Let's go. They raced to the hospital. Greg held Erik's hand through the emergency room check-in, through the endless waiting, through the terrifying sounds of medical equipment and hurrying staff. Tell me a story, Erik whispered. Mommy always tells stories when I'm scared. So Greg, who hadn't told a story since he was a kid himself, made one up. Something about a brave knight who was really scared of dragons, but had to rescue his sister anyway. He improvised shadow puppets with the waiting room lights. He bought Erik hot chocolate from the vending machine even though it was 10 p.m. And when Erik finally cried, really cried, the deep sobs of a 5-year-old who doesn't understand why his sister can't breathe, Greg held him and said the only true thing he knew. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. I'm here. 6 hours later, Beverly finally came out. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her clothes rumpled, but she was smiling slightly. She's okay. They got her stabilized. Can stay overnight for observation. She looked around the waiting room and found Erik asleep against Greg's shoulder. Greg's jacket draped over the boy like a blanket. Empty hot chocolate cups and shadow puppet drawings scattered on the chairs. Beverly's eyes filled with tears. You stayed, she whispered. Of course I stayed. Greg looked up at her. Where else would I be? Beverly sat beside them, and Greg wrapped his arm around her too. The three of them, in a hospital waiting room at 2 a.m., became something they'd never been before. A family in crisis, facing it together. When Erik stirred awake, he looked up at Greg sleepily. You stayed, he echoed his mother. Always, Greg promised. And for the first time, Erik called him Dad. The hospital discharged Erika the next morning with a new inhaler prescription and instructions for better asthma management, which, of course, cost money Beverly didn't have. Greg paid for it without asking. Beverly was too exhausted to fight him. They walked to the parking garage in silence, Erik holding Greg's hand, Erika holding Beverly's, all of them moving like survivors of a shipwreck. I need to open the cart, Beverly said when they reached her car. I lost yesterday's income. Can't afford to lose today's too. Bev, you haven't slept. I'll sleep when the bills are paid. She unlocked her car. Can you give me a ride to get my cart? It's still at the park. So Greg drove them, all four of them cramped in his Tesla, the twins marveling at the spaceship car, to Millennium Park at 7 a.m. The media was waiting. Greg counted at least 6 news vans, 24 cameras, countless reporters with microphones. Damn it, Beverly muttered. She looked at the twins. Stay in the car. Lock the doors. I'll handle this. No. Greg put a hand on her arm. Let me. They're not here for you right now. They're here for the story. Secret family of disgraced CEO. Well, I'm not giving them that story. She opened the door. Stay with the kids. Beverly Perry walked toward that media circus like a warrior approaching battle. The reporters swarmed immediately. Ms. Perry. Ms. Perry. How long have you been involved with Greg Nelson? Were you aware of his financial crimes? Is it true he's been hiding his children from his investors? Beverly kept walking, trying to reach her cart, but they blocked her path, cameras and microphones creating a wall. Ms. Perry, our viewers deserve to know, is Greg Nelson a deadbeat dad and a criminal? That's when Beverly stopped. She turned to face the main camera, WGN News, the logo said, and something in her expression made the entire crowd go silent. You want a statement? Her voice was clear, steady, powerful. Here's your statement. What happened next would be shared over 2 million times in the next 24 hours. Greg Nelson is many things, Beverly said, looking directly into the camera. But he's not a criminal. Ms. Perry, the evidence. I don't care about your evidence. I care about the man I've watched every single day for the past month. She took a breath. That man shows up at my hot dog cart at 6:30 every morning. He preps condiments, organizes supplies, and helps me serve customers. He doesn't do it for publicity. Until you showed up, nobody knew. He does it because he's trying to be better. But 6 years ago, he made a mistake. A massive one. He left me when I was pregnant. He chose his company over his family. He broke my heart and my trust. Beverly's voice didn't waver. But people can grow. People can change. People can choose differently. She looked past the camera, directly at Greg, who was watching from the car. Yesterday, my daughter had an asthma attack. I called Greg in a panic because I couldn't reach anyone else. And you know what he did? He dropped everything. He picked up my son from my apartment, drove him to the hospital, and sat in an ER waiting room for 6 hours making shadow puppets and buying hot chocolate and telling stories. Her voice broke slightly. My son fell asleep on his shoulder. And when I came out at 2 a.m., Greg was still there. Still holding my child. Still present. That doesn't excuse his alleged crimes. He didn't do it. Beverly's voice turned fierce. I've spent enough time with Greg to know this. He's ambitious, flawed, too focused on success. But he's not a thief. He built his company from scratch, just like I built mine. You don't steal from something you poured your heart into. Then why would his business partner? Because jealous people destroy what they can't control. Because bitter people tear down what they couldn't build. Beverly stepped closer to the camera. Greg Nelson is a devoted father who's trying to make up for lost time. He's a man who helps me with my hot dog cart because that's what his children's mother needs. He's not perfect. But he's here doing the work, showing up every day. The reporter tried to interject, but Beverly wasn't done. You want a story? Here's your story. Single mother of twins builds successful business from nothing. Man who abandoned her returns, does the actual work of earning forgiveness. That's the story. Not your clickbait headlines about scandal and crime. She looked directly at the camera one more time. I'm Beverly Perry. These are my children, Erik and Erika. We sell the best hot dogs in Chicago at this cart right here. And if you're not buying hot dogs, get off my spot. I've got a living to make. She pushed through the crowd, unlocked her cart, and started setting up like none of them existed. The reporters stood there, stunned. Then, slowly, they dispersed. The interview clip was on social media within minutes. If Beverly's loyalty isn't giving you all the feels, check your pulse. Last call for subscriptions, people. And drop those comments. Where in the world are you watching this from? Greg watched Beverly's defense from the car, tears streaming down his face. Mommy's on TV. Erika pressed her face against the window. She's famous. She defended me, Greg whispered. Of course she did, Erik said matter-of-factly. That's what moms do. They protect the people they love. The people they love. The interview went viral. #Beverly Speaks trended nationally within hours. News outlets that had been gleefully destroying Greg suddenly had to contend with a different narrative. one where a strong, articulate woman vouched for his character without equivocation. More importantly, Beverly's passionate defense triggered something else: scrutiny. If a single mother who'd been abandoned by Greg believed in him this strongly, maybe the evidence deserved a second look. Investigative journalists started digging into Marcus Webb's claims. Forensic accountants from neutral firms volunteered to review the documents. And what they found was damning, but not for Greg. The emails were fake. Sophisticated deepfakes using AI to generate text that matched Greg's writing style. The routing numbers led to accounts Marcus had created using stolen credentials. The embezzlement was actually Marcus systematically funneling company funds to offshore accounts, then framing Greg when he got close to discovering the theft. Within 72 hours, the entire scandal collapsed. Marcus was arrested. The board issued a formal apology. Investors came crawling back with sheepish excuses. And Greg Nelson, cleared of all charges, reputation intact, received hundreds of interview requests wanting to know about the hot dog vendor who saved him. He declined them all. Instead, he showed up at Beverly's cart at 6:30 a.m. with 2 coffees and a simple question. "Thank you for believing in me when everyone else didn't." Beverly took her coffee, black, 1 sugar. "You would have done the same for me." Would I have? 6 years ago. She considered this. No, probably not. She smiled slightly. "But you would now. That's what matters." 3 months passed. Greg returned to Nelson Technologies, but everything was different. He saw his company clearly for the first time: the crushing hours, the relentless pressure, the way ambition could become a prison if you let it. He'd built an empire, but at what cost? One morning, in a board meeting discussing Q4 projections, Greg looked around the conference table at 15 executives in expensive suits talking about market share and shareholder value. And he realized, none of it mattered compared to watching Erik laugh at breakfast or helping Erika with her math homework or seeing Beverly smile when he got the condiment order right. "I'm stepping down as CEO," he said, interrupting a presentation about expansion strategies. The room went silent. "Excuse me." The CFO stared. "Greg, we just got you back." "I know. And I'm grateful for the support. But I don't want this anymore." He stood. "I want to recommend Sarah Chun as my replacement. She's been COO for 3 years, she's brilliant, and she actually enjoys this." He gestured to the boardroom. "I'm done building empires. I want to build something that actually matters." "What are you talking about?" Greg smiled. "I'm opening a restaurant." He proposed the idea to Beverly that evening, after they'd closed the cart. "Not a gift," he clarified immediately when she tensed. "A partnership. 50/50ths. Your recipes, your vision, your leadership in the kitchen. I handle operations, logistics, the boring business stuff. We build it together." "Greg. Before you say no, hear me out." He pulled out his tablet, but this time, instead of photos of spaces he'd already leased, it showed sketches. Rough drawings done in pencil. "I thought we could call it Erik and Erika's. Feature your gourmet hot dogs alongside other street food. Upscale but accessible. Family-friendly." Beverly looked at the sketches. They were terrible. Greg couldn't draw, but they were thoughtful. A kid's corner. An open kitchen so customers could watch cooking. Photos of the twins on the walls. "You drew these yourself." "Badly, yes. But I wanted to show you my vision so you could tell me all the ways I'm wrong and we could figure it out together." He set down the tablet. "I'm not trying to fix your life, Bev. I'm asking to be part of it. Really part of it. Partners." Beverly studied the sketches for a long time. I'd want my recipes protected. My name on everything. Creative control in the kitchen. Absolutely. And we'd have to navigate the licensing hell together. No shortcuts. No paying people off. We do it right. Agreed. And Erik and Erika help. This is their restaurant too. I wouldn't have it any other way. Beverly looked at him, really looked at him, like she was seeing someone she'd been searching for. Okay, she said finally. Let's build something real. 6 months later, Erik and Erika's Gourmet Dogs opened in West Loop. The space wasn't the fancy Lincoln Park location Greg had originally leased. It was smaller, grittier, more honest. Beverly had insisted on a neighborhood spot, somewhere families could actually afford, where the locals who'd supported her cart would feel welcome. Opening night was chaos in the best way. The twins wore matching aprons with Junior. Sous Chef embroidered on them. Beverly ran the kitchen with the same efficient grace she'd shown at her cart, but now with a full staff and proper equipment. Greg worked the front, greeting customers, bussing tables, doing whatever was needed. He'd traded his Armani suits for aprons permanently. He'd moved from his penthouse to a modest 3-bedroom apartment 2 blocks from Beverly's place, close enough to help with school pickups, far enough to respect boundaries that were slowly, carefully dissolving. They weren't married. They weren't even officially dating. But they were building something together that felt more permanent than any piece of paper. Dad. Erik's voice cut through the restaurant din. Dad, we ran out of relish. Greg's heart swelled every single time he heard that word. On it, buddy. He grabbed supplies from storage, still marveling at how this chaos, this work, this real life, made him happier than any acquisition, any award, any magazine cover ever had. Beverly caught his eye from the kitchen window and smiled. A real smile. The kind she used to give him 7 years ago when they were building dreams together. We're building dreams again, Greg thought. Just better ones this time. That evening, after the last customer left and the twins were sprawled in a booth doing homework while staff cleaned, Erika looked up from her math problems. Dad. Yeah, sweetheart. Are you and Mommy getting married? The cleaning stopped. The staff pretended to be very interested in wiping counters. Beverly froze mid-inventory in the kitchen. Greg walked to Beverly, took her hand, pulled her out to where the twins could see. He knelt, not on one knee like a proposal, but on both knees, making himself equal to the children's eye level. Erik, Erika, I need to tell you guys something important. They scrambled off the booth, suddenly serious. Your mom and I were engaged once. 7 years ago. I messed it up. I chose my company over her, and I left. He looked at Beverly, then back at the twins. That was the biggest mistake of my life. But because of that mistake, I missed something incredible. I missed you. You didn't know about us, Erik said. Mommy said you didn't know. That's true. But I should have. I should have answered my phone. Should have been there. Should have been the kind of man who would never leave in the first place. He took a shaky breath. I can't change the past, but I can choose the future. He looked at Beverly now, standing, taking both her hands. I love you, Beverly Perry. Not the I'll love you once the company succeeds love. Not the I'll fit you in between meetings love. Real love. The kind where I choose you every single day, even when it's hard, even when it's inconvenient, even when there are deals to close and empires to build. Beverly's eyes glistened. I don't have a ring. I learned my lesson about grand gestures. He smiled slightly. But I have this. I promise to show up. Every morning, every night, every time you need me. I promise to be present. I promise to build our dreams together instead of chasing my own alone. Greg. I love you in a mature, real way that understands presence matters more than presence. I love you as my partner, not my project. And I choose you. Every day I choose you. Beverly was crying now. Happy tears. I love you too, she whispered. And I choose you too. Finally. Erik tugged on Greg's pants. So are you getting married or not? Because I need to know if I should plan on wearing a suit. Everyone laughed. Yes, Beverly said, looking at Greg. Yes, we're getting married. When we're ready. When it's right. When we've earned it. You've earned it, Greg said. I'm still working on it. Then work faster, Erika said pragmatically. Because I want to be a flower girl, and I'm not getting any younger. The restaurant filled with laughter. 1 year later, Beverly and Greg got married in a ceremony at Millennium Park, right where Greg had first found her again. The twins served as ring bearer and flower girl. Mrs. Chen sat in the front row, crying happy tears. The staff from Erik and Erika's catered the reception. Former customers from Beverly's cart showed up with handmade cards and heartfelt congratulations. Greg's business associates mingled with Beverly's street vendor friends. Billionaires and hot dog sellers sharing the same space, the same celebration, the same joy. It wasn't fancy. There were no ice sculptures or string quartets. The chairs were rented, the flowers from a local wholesaler, the cake from a neighborhood bakery. It was perfect. When Greg kissed his bride, Erik and Erika cheered so loudly the crowd laughed. And when Beverly whispered, "Thank you for proving you changed," Greg whispered back, "Thank you for giving me the chance to try." That's it, family. This is why we tell these stories. Because everyone deserves a second chance at love. If this touched your heart, give us a subscribe, hit that notification bell, and tell us in the comments, what time is it where you are, and do you believe in second chances? We'll see you in the next story. 5 years after that, Erik and Erika's had expanded to 3 locations. Greg never went back to running Nelson Technologies. He remained on the board but spent his days helping Beverly manage their growing restaurant empire, a different kind of empire, built on family instead of ambition. Erik discovered he wanted to be a chef like his mom. Erika announced she wanted to be a businessperson like her dad. They fought over who got to name the 3rd restaurant location. They compromised. It was called E&E's West Side. On quiet Sunday mornings, Greg still met Beverly at the original Millennium Park location, the spot where he'd first seen her again, and they'd walk to their first restaurant, holding hands, remembering how far they'd come. "Do you ever regret it?" Beverly asked one morning. "Leaving the CEO position? Walking away from all that power?" Greg looked at his wife, the woman who'd seen him at his worst and still chose him. Thought about his children sleeping at home, safe and loved. Considered the life they'd built together from broken pieces. "Never," he said. "Not even for a second." And he meant it. Because Greg Nelson had learned the most important lesson success could never teach. Some things are worth more than empires. Family was one of them. Love was another. And showing up, every day with presence and purpose, was the only wealth that actually mattered.